Traveling as a filmmaker. Today we talk about my go-to travel kit and a few tricks of the trade I've picked up over the years. I'm extremely lucky to have had the opportunity to travel to so many places over the years for different projects. For years I had dreamed about traveling, and when I was finally able to do it, there was a very steep learning curve, so hopefully some of my tips in this video will help you avoid the headaches that I ran into. Let's first talk about kit. I have tried dozens of bags over the years and have narrowed it down to these three. The f-stop is for really big projects where I'm hiking a lot. It's my biggest bag that will fit into an overhead bin on a plane and can not only carry multiple bodies, lenses, and support rigs, but it also has enough room to store 2 to 3 days worth of clothing essentials. If I'm running very light in an urban environment, I like this wandered bag. It'll fit a body, a few lenses, and some extra small gear like batteries and filters. For everything else, I've found this Peak design to be the perfect size for my go-to travel kit, which is the LUMIX S52X, the LUMIX 24-70, and a LUMIX 70-200, audio gear, laptop, and tripod. This is just small enough to fit under the seat of an airplane as well, which allows me to bring my clothes in the overhead compartment. Which brings me to my first big tip. When you can, do not check bags. It is my biggest nightmare to lose a bag when heading to a shoot, which unfortunately in my experience is a big risk when you are traveling overseas or have a connecting flight. Now, occasionally I need to bring support gear to a big shoot, and I need to adapt my travel kit to that. I was just in Vegas covering a big event and needed a multi-camera setup. To do this, we packed all our gear into 2 Pelican air cases for the overhead compartments, but we did have to check our tripods. My rule of thumb is if you have to check gear, you kind of want to check the gear that you could operate without in a pinch, so camera bodies and lenses will never be checked in, they always stay with me. The best part of traveling is the chance to experience new locations and cultures. But when you're traveling for work, you often need to figure this out as efficiently as possible to get the job at hand accomplished. To do this, I'll spend a few days researching the location as much as possible before I even step onto a plane. There are 3 categories that will go into my travel notes. The first is local laws. Depending on the shoot, I need to know what I can and can't do, as the last thing you want to do while traveling abroad is to get in trouble with local law enforcement. A quick Google search on local film laws is usually all you need to do. The next thing I research is local customs. A huge part of traveling for me is trying to blend in. I don't want to be seen as a tourist, as often tourists are targets for scams and theft, and this tip has actually saved me in the past. The third thing I research is the weather. This one might be a no-brainer for some people, but it's always worth checking out. There have been a few tough lessons here for me when I have assumed a warm location would be warm. I cannot tell you the amount of extra layers I have purchased while on location because of this assumption. So now I always make sure to just glance at the weather quickly. The fourth research item on my list is locations. While I prefer to scout in person, many of my shoots don't have the time for this as much as I would like, so I always come with a few locations in mind. To source these, there's a few apps I'll use. Instagram is an obvious choice, but I often find it cumbersome to track the exact spot of places that I find there, so I turn to another app called Spots. It's been around for a few years, and basically a database of cool spots with photo references as well as tips and instructions to find these locations. And finally, the last thing I will do before getting on a plane is I will download a map onto Google Maps so I can have it just in case I lose service. While these things are important, it doesn't matter if you're not going to take care of yourself first. Recently, on a trip to Prague, I experienced probably the worst jet lag I ever had. I just come off a job in Vegas, and I was in New York City for about 12 hours before getting on another plane, and the only way I was able to get through this back-to-back schedule was rest and hydration. It's so easy to burn yourself out accidentally when traveling. Flying, it really fatigues you in a way that you might not realize, and this is something that I still struggle with because when I land somewhere new, everything is new and exciting, and I feel energized, only to crash really hard a few hours later. If you can, I always try to arrive a day earlier to adjust my body to a new time zone and get some good food in me and rest. A huge thing that I just started doing recently is tracking my body biometrics. And this sounds a little crazy, but having something that takes data measurements of your body's output is super helpful when it comes to recovery. And yeah, it does sound almost like something out of a sci-fi movie, but I was gifted a Whoop a few months ago, and I love seeing all the metrics, and it's super helpful to know what my baseline is. And obviously there's a ton of devices on the market that do this, and I definitely recommend it to help you stay on, just to stay on top of your energy levels while shooting. The last thing I will touch upon in this video is the question I get the most, and that is, how do I get all of these travel opportunities? And I really wish there was an easy answer, but the reality of traveling as a filmmaker really comes down to your clients and your clients' needs. For years, I was just shooting local where I lived, but the more people I met, the more my client list expanded, and eventually I was able to find these opportunities to travel to work. The real key to most of my traveling was either having a skill set that the client couldn't find locally to where they wanted to shoot, or having that relationship with the client where they only trusted me to get the job done, so they were willing to pay the extra expense of bringing someone onto that location. Now, once you figure that all out, the rest of this video will come into play. And if I can leave you with one final tip, that is to be as flexible as you can when it comes to traveling. Often things don't go to plan, people bail, things are closed due to unforeseen circumstances, or a shot you have in mind just doesn't match what it is in real life. But when those wrenches get thrown, if you've done the research, you've brought the right gear, and have an open mindset, that's usually when you can find the unexpected shots, and usually the unexpected shots are the ones that become my favorites.